Welcome. I hope you are having a wonderful night, dear viewer. Tonight, I will be telling some terrifyingly scary stories. Make sure to leave your feedback on the comments so I can make this the best experience for you. And if you have any stories you would like me to tell, you can send them through the link in the description. Let's begin. Story 1. I have been asked to tell another story from my experience as a trauma scene cleaner. It has been a while since I posted a story about a suicide house, but I have had several requests for more stories about my experiences in the field of trauma scene work. If you don't know what that is, I used to lead a crew that would go in after a murder, suicide, unattended death, accidental death, fire death, or any manner of incident that caused damage to a structure that left behind a scene that the victim's family shouldn't have to see. Now I know my stories are not scary in the haunted or serial killer type stories, but the fact is most people couldn't handle walking into a scene like many of the ones I've been on. We actually had to be very careful how we trained crew members who worked on such scenes. It was often a volunteer basis for working on those types of scenes, meaning we didn't force anyone to go to a house where the dad killed all the children before blowing his brains out in the lazy boy. We just didn't start someone in training and then go, oh, by the way, we're going to a multiple homicide. Anyway, if there was a way to describe some of the sights and smells of doing this type of work, I'm sure you would see how truly scary or messed up this all is. First of all, I have to say that suicide is not glamorous. Nor is it ever over for those around you. If you need help, please get help. Don't let your loved ones find you that way. It not only changes them, but changes the feeling inside the house. Anyway, back to my story. This took place in the late 1990s, just before I got out of the field. We got a call to dispatch a crew out to a house, and we were told that there was an incident with at least one death. Sometimes it is giving to us that way, but never like a real whole story. But sometimes we saw the true story on the evening news, or a neighbor that talks too much. We arrive at this house, modest house, not really a high-end home, but not a low-end either. It was a two-story home about midway into a cul-de-sac street. As with some scenes, there is a cluster of neighbors outside looking at who we were and why we were there. The sheriff's department had just released the scene, so all of the crime scene investigators had already done their job. As I approached the house, I noticed a ton of what looked like bullet holes in the stucco, broken glass, and a long blood stain on the driveway. We went inside and had to suit up almost immediately, as the police had probably used tear gas. There was bloodstains all over it, looked like as if someone had been dragged through the house with blood gushing. There were areas that had pooled up blood, areas where things were kind of looked like explosions, happened to which I assume flashbangs were used. Or maybe the guy inside had shot up. Probably what strikes you the most in situations like this is how benign the underneath looks. I don't know how to describe it, but just imagine, if you will, a place looking like the inside of a home molded out of the TV set of Full House. Now imagine that same TV set with blood smeared and pooled, bullet holes and tons of broken glass. I mean, they seemed like a very normal family. I remember in their living room a big blue woodcut sign that said family. You know, before live, laugh, love signs were in style, and under that sign was a bunch of family photos of kids, parents, Christmas, graduation, and vacations. Other things in the house was a wall dedicated to the dad's love of his sports teams and pictures of him with his buddies at games and stuff. So, what happened? From what we pieced together from the news reports, neighbors who wanted to talk to us while we were cleaning his blood off the driveway, and from the scene itself, was that the dad went crazy. He had been talking about demons, not like I got my own demons, but actual demons. He was sure that he was being attacked by the devil, and that demons were trying to take the souls of his family. So rather than to let the demons take his family, he killed them, and so they would go to heaven. He ended up barricading himself in the house. It looked like some family members tried to get away after being shot and stabbed, but one collapsed in the kitchen and one escaped somehow, and one was pulled out by the police. He ended up shooting back at the police, and the neighborhood was evacuated for blocks. Not sure about all that as we arrived on scene much later, but that was what the people outside were saying. In the end, he escaped the house, ended up on the roof, still shooting back and the police, and they shot him. He fell from the roof, and that was his blood we were cleaning from the driveway. He murdered his wife. One of his older children later died in the hospital. One of the kids was killed inside the house. One escaped, and I think another family member that lived with them was unharmed as they were not at the house when this all went down. It took us a lot longer to clean this scene, as there were so many holes, and we had to remove almost all of the carpet and soft surfaces due to the tear gas. It was a terrible scene inside. I know this might sound religious or whatever, but come across enough of these scenes, and you start to really believe evil does exist. Story 2. Once upon a time, in the year 1980, when I was a mere 16 years old, life took an unexpected turn, leaving me homeless on the streets of Long Beach, California. My mother was serving time in federal prison, and my father resided far away in Texas. Desperate and without a place to call my own, I found refuge in cars and garages, embracing the harsh reality that had befallen me. It was during one fateful day, as I hitchhiked my way from downtown to Belmont Shores, that I encountered a rather peculiar individual, although a sense of strangeness emanated from him. I remained unfazed by his demeanor. You see, at this point in my life, I was no stranger to hardship, having already succumbed to the life of a hard drug user and having faced arrest for possessing a whopping 25 pounds of marijuana at Huntington Beach. But that's a tale for another time. The mysterious stranger, who had kindly offered me a ride, decided to take a short detour to pick up some Valium pills. With no reservations, I agreed, and our journey led us onto Coronado Street, a few blocks away from our original route on Ocean Boulevard. He parked the car in front of a modest apartment building and disappeared inside, assuring me of his swift return. As I waited in the car, time seemed to stretch endlessly. Moments turned into minutes, and the minutes into an eternity. Eventually, he emerged from the apartment and relayed an intriguing story about his cousin locking the Valium pills inside a safe. Patiently awaiting his cousin's call with the combination, he proposed that we smoke a joint in the meantime. Given my affinity for marijuana, I agreed without much hesitation. Following him upstairs into the apartment, I couldn't help but maintain a cautious vigilance. Long Beach had its fair share of peculiar characters after all. As I settled onto the couch, my eyes instinctively scanned the room, searching for any signs of danger. Among the scattered objects, I spotted a pair of scissors, accompanied by various odds and ends. While the apartment appeared relatively tidy, my gut told me to stay on guard. Curiosity piqued. The stranger reached under the couch, retrieving what I initially presumed to be a tray for weed. However, to my surprise, he held a pair of flex cuffs in his hand. Playfully, he asked, "Ever seen one of these?" Suddenly, his demeanor changed entirely as he lunged towards me, grabbing my wrist and deploying a can of mace to spray to my face. In the midst of the struggle, he managed to fasten one zip tie around my wrists, but I fought back, pulling my hand free before he could tighten the restraint. Seizing the moment, I swiftly rose to my feet, my eyes fixed on the scissors. The intensity of the situation escalated as he caught me in a bear hug from behind, his grip tightening around my body. With adrenaline coursing through my veins, I stabbed at him with the scissors, aiming for any vulnerable spot within reach. The realization that my life hung in the balance fueled my every move, driving me to deliver each blow with unwavering determination. Despite my efforts, he managed to pin my arms, choking me mercilessly from behind. Gasping for breath, I sensed the ever-tightening grip constricting around my throat, leaving me teetering on the precipice of death. In that dire moment, I made a fateful decision. I feigned surrender, allowing my body to go limp, deceiving him into believing his victory was assured. Seizing the opportunity, he released his grip, dropping me to the floor and dragged me by the arm to the bathroom. Cold water streamed from the faucet as he ordered me to wash my face, leaving me momentarily unattended. Sensing a fleeting chance for escape, I quickly clambered onto the rim of the bathtub, my heart pounding with desperate urgency. Just as I prepared to leap to freedom through the seconds, story window, a sight froze me in my tracks. His arm protruded through the partially opened bathroom door, holding a towel, a clear indication that he intended to recapture me. In a bold move, I positioned my body against the door, creating a barrier that sent him reeling backward. Seizing the moment, I vaulted over him, racing toward the front door. However, my elation quickly transformed into horror when I discovered that it required a key to unlock from the inside. With trembling hands, I gripped the doorknob, praying for a miracle, and miraculously, it turned. The door swung open, granting me freedom, and I dashed outside, leaving behind the nightmare that had nearly claimed my life. Frantically, I pounded on the doors of each unit in the apartment complex, shouting, "Police. Call the police." There were 12 units in total, and the urgency of my situation compelled me to seek assistance from anyone who might be listening. Descending the stairs, my eyes fell upon two individuals engaged in a game of street football. Startled by my disheveled appearance and the zip tie still bound around my wrist, they inquired about the commotion, prompting me to recount the terrifying events that had just unfolded. Although not inherently privy to my plight, their empathetic hearts urged them to act. Before long, the wailing sirens of 3 police cars pierced the air, their vibrant lights and blaring sirens signaling the arrival of salvation. Law enforcement officers approached, their questions seeking to unravel the twisted tale of this harrowing encounter. I obliged, recounting every detail, no matter how chilling. With a firm purpose, they ascended to the perpetrator's apartment, only to return with a command for me to accompany them. Reluctantly, I followed their instructions, grappling with the overwhelming fear of revisiting the scene of my near demise. Inside the apartment, the stranger had spun a web of lies, accusing me of attempting to rob him and viciously stabbing him in the face. However, as the police diligently searched the premises, their trained eyes uncovered a different reality, a collection of items suggestive of a different nature altogether, an incriminating zip tie identical to the one I had escaped from. Moments later, we found ourselves outside once again. The officers explained that due to my status as a juvenile, my parents would need to press charges for any legal action to proceed. Aware of the consequences this would entail for my family, I made the difficult decision to withhold my consent. Understanding my plight, the police left, allowing me to continue on my own path. Eventually, my mother's release from federal prison offered a glimmer of hope in my turbulent existence. Seeking a fresh start, I relocated to Texas, where I spent the next 5 years. Upon my return to California, a stroke of serendipity unfolded before my eyes. My mother and sister had purchased a house that lay almost directly across the street from the very apartment complex that had housed my darkest hour. Filled with trepidation, I accompanied my sister to her new abode, unaware of the revelation that awaited me. As my sister proudly introduced me to her husband, my heart skipped a beat. The man standing before me, tossing a football with carefree abandon, was none other than the stranger I'd encountered all those years ago. Recognition dawned upon him, and he remarked, "Where do I know you from?" Overwhelmed with emotion, I replied, "You remember the kid with the zip tie?" To which he responded in disbelief, "No fucking way." And there it was, a testament to the incredible, unfathomable twists that life can deliver. This story, which I've shared with you today, represents just a fraction of the wild tales that have shaped my existence. Life, as they say, truly is stranger than fiction. Story 3. Another story from back when I did crime scene cleanup work. Some of my previous posts regarding my experience doing crime scene cleanup work, or trauma scene work as we called it, generated a lot of people messaging me, asking me to write up more stories from my past. I used to do this work in the early 1990s and ran into all kinds of situations, such as accidental deaths, suicides, fire deaths, explosions, homicides, unattended deaths, and pretty much any messed up situation that could happen inside a home or structure. One of my first calls when I started doing this work had to be around 1993 to 1994. It was to a really, really rich fancy home. The home was located in a very wealthy area of Los Angeles up in the hills area, and it was a huge home with a lot of land surrounding it. This was the first time I ever saw an elevator in a home. I never met the homeowner or any representative from the person who owned the home, as all of the paperwork was done via fax. I think it was owned by an Asian family, but I couldn't be 100% sure. I only thought this at the time due to the furnishings and stuff inside the home. The home was pretty much emptied out of most of the personal contents prior to our arrival, so I didn't see any family photos on the walls. The home was so huge that you could get lost inside. Up to this point, I had never been inside a multi-level home, much less one with so many bedrooms. A game room, indoor pool, bar, dens, family rooms, basements, and I think a 6-car garage if I remember correctly. Anyway, we started work on this one really late in the evening. It was once a crime scene, but by the time it was released to us, there were other damages that I couldn't explain. I assumed that the person was killed in the master bathroom, as there were some signs of trauma and some bullet holes in the bathroom shower and surrounding walls. Not much blood and that kind of stuff to clean up, as I think the person must have died in the huge walk, in shower. What was odd was that I don't know if the shooter turned on all the water faucets in the house, because there was water damage throughout the house. Kind of like Home Alone wet bandit stuff. There were areas where we had to remove wet drywall, wet carpet, baseboards, wood flooring, wet ceilings, and cabinets. Since this was all over this huge house, and my crew at the time were just about 5 of us, we split up doing different areas. This house was so big that you couldn't hear each other from different areas, even if you were screaming. But we all carried these old Motorola walkie-talkies that we could call and communicate with each other for miles. One of the issues we were dealing with was that in certain areas of the house, the lights were off. I think prior to us coming out, an electrician shut off power in different areas because electrical components got wet. We all decided that using the elevator wasn't a good idea, and we just used stairs. Walking through the different areas of the home was completely dark. We thought about using our generator, but the house was too big, and there were so many rooms. So we just ran extension cords with light to areas we needed. But this still didn't light up enough of the house. I remember 2 of our guys were working on the upstairs. I think you would call it the 3rd or 4th floor, the area where the murder took place. Another guy was working by himself in what looked like a bar indoor nightclub area, removing wet cabinets and flooring. Another guy was working on this huge walk and closet, tearing out wet carpet and drywall from floor to ceiling. I started working in a basement area. There were some ceiling and walls that needed to be removed. This job was going to be an all-nighter because of the vast areas and multiple areas that all the damage was. And we kept finding more and more. Also, everything that we removed that was damaged was a long trek to take it out of the house and down the drive to our trucks, adding to the time it took. So why is this a scary or creepy story? Well, imagine being in this huge home where a murder took place, for one. But as we got on through the night working, we started hearing and experiencing things. Our old radios would do a beep beep chime when someone was about to say something over the air. Since it was only our company that had these radios, it wasn't random interference from outside sources, and we hadn't experienced such things before. But as the night went on and we were working, we kept getting alerts that someone was about to talk. So I and others would drop what we were doing and listen for after the beep beep, like for someone to say something, but no one spoke. Okay, so maybe the guys were fooling around with the radios. I was making my way with a trash can of debris out of the basement. As I didn't want to make my trash too heavy to carry out, I made several loads, and it was a summer night, so getting out in the cool summer air was also a benefit. One of these trips, I had to go up the stairs from the basement and down a long hallway. I believe to my right was an opening to a large living room type room, and to my left were some windows to the outside. But further down was the door that I needed to take to exit and take my debris out. One of these trips, the lights all went out. I got some light from the moon outside, but to my right, the rest of the house seemed unnaturally dark. As I made my way back to the truck, I grabbed a small flashlight in case this happened again. After a while of working the basement area, one of my guys comes up to me and starts chatting. I can tell he's nervous, and he starts suggesting that it would be better if we worked together. That way, we can finish up areas quicker. I could tell he didn't want to be by himself, so I agreed. And honestly, I knew how he felt. At about 1 a.m., we all decided to take a break and meet in the pool table room. Eat and take a break. We started exchanging stories about the place, mostly on how cool it was, but also on how creepy it was. And we all experienced random whole sections of the house losing power, only for it to come back on again. Then a different section. The guys that were on the upstairs part talked about hearing music, but couldn't find the source. I brought up, who is the dumbass who keeps hitting the talk button? No one did. We started coming to the realization that this job wasn't going to be completed tonight, and it would be a 2 or 3 day job. We talked about our options, and one of them was since it was nearly 2 a.m. At that point, we should work a few more hours, sleep there, and get up and go shower and go back to our office. I, for one, wasn't into the idea of sleeping in that house and overruled and said we will work a couple more hours, then call it a day. The following day, we already had another job on the books, so we got home and rested a little, then back at it. We got back to the big fancy house about 3 p.m. and decided to work as long as we could, then finish it up the following day. That evening, we sent one of the guys for pizza, and we kept working. So there were 2 of us paired up, and when the pizza came, we would break, eat, and rest up a bit, then back to it. I know this is drawn out, but for the things that happened next, to this day, I am not sure if it was us being super tired and sleep deprived, or if something else was going on in the house. After we ate our dinner, and once again back in the pool table room, we were just relaxing as the work and distances in this house took a toll on us. We decided the best case, so that none of us gets too tired, lugging the trash, is we would split that duty. One guy would go, then come back, and another guy would go and come back, and so on. Almost everyone hears music playing at some point in the house. I heard it walking down from the kitchen area to that long hallway, but it sounded like it was coming from another location in the house. Another guy heard it coming from upstairs in the master bedroom area, but when he got up there, it sounded like it was somewhere else. Okay, just music, no big deal. One of our guys called us over the radio as he was making his way back from taking debris to our trucks and said, "Hey, was someone over in the kitchen pantry room?" We were all saying no and why. He said the door is open and it wasn't before. We joked with him that he was probably hungry. It was about midnight at this point, and I was working in one of the extra bedrooms that had its own private bathroom. This area was down a long hallway that had a few other rooms and ended in a den-type area. I was with one of my guys, and we both jumped as we heard a loud bang. It sounded like something big and flat hit the ground, kind of like if you knocked over a large piece of furniture. I got on the radio and checked on my guys, thinking they broke something, and everyone said no, that they hadn't broken anything, and no one else heard it. My coworker and I sure did. So we went down the hallway and looked around. Maybe a picture fell from the wall or something fell over. Nothing. On one of the last trips from that area, my coworker took the debris to the truck, and I was left alone in the room, waiting for him to return. And then the lights went out. I was sitting there in this room in the dark. All down the hallway was pitch dark for some reason, not even enough light from the moon. He took our flashlight with him. I started to make my way out of the room, going down to the den area that led to a larger open room. Then from there to a living room and dining room, and then onto the kitchen. And I started to see light from the pool table room, so I started to make my way over there. Then those lights went out. I got on my radio and called out that all the lights on the second floor were out. I started to hear someone walking towards me, coming from the living room area, and thinking it was my coworker, I called out to him and didn't get a response. I stood there in silence. Then I started to see a flashlight moving around, and it was another coworker. He said that in his area, the lights were on, and he heard me calling out that the lights were out. He came to see if I was okay. He came from the kitchen and had made his way around to where I was. He had no idea what I was talking about as the lights were on in his area. After this, we were all like, yeah, we're done for the night. We had already committed to finishing this job, and even if it meant we would need to work another whole day. So we all called it a night and agreed to meet up early in the morning, sleep in our own beds, showered, and eat a good meal. We'll get started the next day. The following day, we all arrived at the house early. We were the first to arrive. We had a meeting before going in, and it was unanimous. We were all scared of the house. We were all scared of the house. We did agree that we wouldn't bring it up to each other as it would scare us even more. As we started our work that day, we just made it a point to stay together, regardless of the area we were working in. The only time we would split up is if we needed to go to our trucks, and even then, one of us would go with the other. That day, we finished the job and got everything cleaned up. Nothing weird or scary happened during the day. We did hear some sounds, but it was more from the house settling and creaking. But as soon as we finished, we all got together and agreed that we would never work in that house again. And if it came up, we would decline the job. We all loaded up and got ready to leave. We had made it a point to leave before it got dark, even if it meant coming back the following day to pick up our equipment. As we drove off, I looked back at the house and felt a sense of relief. That was one job I was glad to be done with. Looking back, it could have been a combination of fatigue, sleep deprivation, and the eerie ambiance of that house that made things seem scarier than they actually were. But even to this day, I can't fully explain some of the strange occurrences we experienced during those 2 nights. That's one story from back when I did crime scene cleanup work. I have plenty more. So if you're interested, let me know, and I'll be happy to share another one.